भैया नमस्कार, दोस्तों नमस्कार। आज हम खालिस्तान कॉन्स्पिरेसी का अगला चैप्टर लेने जा रहे हैं। अभी तक हमने आपको बताया है कि जीबीएस सिद्धू के हिसाब से खालिस्तान का जो पूरा मूवमेंट चला था वो 1978 के आसपास में शुरू हुआ था, क्योंकि 1977 में पंजाब में अकाली दल की गवर्नमेंट आ गई थी और कांग्रेस की गवर्नमेंट चली गई थी। तभी से ये लोग प्लानिंग कर रहे थे कि किसी भी तरीके से अकाली गवर्नमेंट को वहां से हटाना है और उसके बाद में फिर कांग्रेसी गवर्नमेंट को लेकर के आना है। तो 78 के 13 अप्रैल को बैसाखी के दिन निरंकारी सम्मेलन चल रहा था, उसके ऊपर अटैक हुआ था। उसमें निरंकारी का जो संत थे वो मारे गए थे। उसके बाद में बवाल हुआ, फिर लाला जगत नारायण को भी मारा गया। उसके बाद उनके लड़के रमेश चंद्र को भी मारा गया। ये पंजाब केसरी के संपादक हुआ करते थे। बहुत खून खराबा हुआ। इस सब के पीछे उस समय की जो गवर्नमेंट थी कांग्रेस की, इंदिरा गांधी की गवर्नमेंट जो थी, खैर इंदिरा गांधी तो उस समय थी नहीं, इंदिरा गांधी तो 1977 में इलेक्शन में हार गई थी। तो ये लोगों ने कंस्पिरेसी की थी कि किसी तरीके से हिंदू और सिख्स को डिवाइड कर दो और फिर देखें क्या होता है। इंदिरा जी ने शायद इतना जल्दी एक्सपेक्ट नहीं किया था कि 1980 की जनवरी में वो वापस आ जाएंगे। जब 1980 जनवरी में आ गई तो जो उन्होंने जहर बोया था 78 अप्रैल के आसपास से, वो उनके सिर पे पड़ गया। तो पहले तो उनको यह था कि पंजाब में हमारी गवर्नमेंट बननी चाहिए। पंजाब में गवर्नमेंट बन गई। वहां पर दरबारा सिंह को चीफ मिनिस्टर बना दिया गया था और जैल सिंह को यहाँ दिल्ली में होम मिनिस्टर बना दिया गया था। तो दोनों खुश थे। फिर भी जैल सिंह अपनी हरकतों से बाज नहीं आ रहे थे। उनको पंजाब के मामले में खुराफात करनी थी, क्योंकि वो 78 से ही उस गैंग में शामिल थे जिसमें कि संजय गांधी साहब भी थे और बंसीलाल थे और कमलनाथ थे, इंदिरा जी तो थी, जैल सिंह भी थे। और जब इनकी गवर्नमेंट बन गई 80 में, तो इन लोगों ने फिर ऑपरेशन 2 शुरू किया। वो ऑपरेशन 1 खत्म हो गया, ऑपरेशन 2 शुरू किया। उसमें यह हुआ कि 1985 के जो जनवरी में इलेक्शन है, नेक्स्ट जनरल इलेक्शन 1980 जनवरी में जो इलेक्शन हुए थे, उसके बाद में 5 साल के बाद जो इलेक्शन होने वाले हैं, उसमें हमारे को वापस आना है। और वो हम तभी वापस आएंगे जब हम हिंदू और सिख्स को आपस में लड़ाएंगे और फिर उसमें आगे जो भी अपना फायदा उठा सकते हैं वो उठाएंगे। मतलब हम कभी हिंदुओं को संभाल देंगे, कभी सिखों को संभाल देंगे, ये कर देंगे। और इसमें उन्होंने जरनैल सिंह भिंडरांवाले को जितना मदद हो सकता था वो सारा मदद किया। तो ये हमने बता चुके हैं। मतलब उसके बाद में ये जो खालिस्तानी मूवमेंट है, इसकी आग जो है वो कनाडा में पहुंच गई और यूएसए में पहुंच गई। सो मच सो दैट कि जब 1982 में जब इंदिरा जी गई थी वहां पर अमेरिका में, रीगन साहब जब वहां पर प्रेसिडेंट थे, तो वहां पे काफी मतलब ये था कि मतलब शक था कि इंदिरा जी के ऊपर अटैक होगा। लेकिन उसको हमारी जो एजेंसियां हैं, सुरक्षा एजेंसियां हैं, आईबी है और रा है, उन लोगों ने उसको किस तरीके से बचा लिया था। उसके बाद में फिर से वो 83 में गई थी वहां यूनाइटेड नेशन जनरल असेंबली को संबोधित करने के लिए। तभी भी कुछ प्रॉब्लम थी। खैर, अब हम आ जाते हैं आज के चैप्टर पे, और वो चैप्टर है आज का कि अबॉर्टेड हेलीबॉर्न कमांडो ऑपरेशन जो हुआ था उसके बारे में क्या है। तो मैं आपको बुक शेयर करता हूँ, जहाँ से हम लोग पढ़ते हैं। जीबीएस सिद्धू साहब की बुक है ये, उसको पढ़ते हैं, देखते हैं क्या बोल रहे हैं। ये इस बुक का चैप्टर 9 है, मैं इसको शेयर करता हूँ, फिर देखते हैं कैसा है। ये देखिए, सबको दिखाई दे रहा होगा। इस चैप्टर का नाम है द अबॉर्टेड हेलीबॉर्न कमांडो ऑपरेशन। अब इसके आगे चलते हैं, इसमें देखते हैं क्या बोल रही है। ये लिख रहे हैं, आर एन कॉव जो रॉ के चीफ थे ड्यूरिंग हिज 9 years 1968 to 77 as head of the R&AW and Director General Security (DGS) was well aware of capabilities of the elite SFF, Special Frontier Force, and adjunct of a bigger group known as Establishment 22 Commando Unit to handle hostage taking and other terrorism-related activities, as the RAW and DGS were both part of the cabinet secretariat functioning directly under the charge of the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, of course, knew the purpose for which SFF was originally raised. When the situation was hotting up in Punjab in the latter half of 1982, Kaur began contemplating an SFF-led heli-borne operation to remove Bhideranwale from Chowk Mehta Gurudwara and later from the Golden Temple complex with as little loss of life and property as possible. 1982 में प्लान कर लिया था इन्होंने. As mentioned earlier, I was at that time handling the additional charge of the liaison division dealing with representative of some of the foreign intelligence agencies posted at the various missions in New Delhi. In those days, मतलब ये liaising officer थे और जो embassies होती हैं वहीं पर वो सारे के सारे जो intelligence वाले होते हैं वो पोस्ट होते हैं, तो उनके साथ में liaising करते थे. In those days, all requests for meeting with liaison contacts, including those from IB, were handled by the head of the liaison division of the R&AW. यही लोग हैंडल करते थे R&AW वाले. In addition to arranging such meeting, the head had to be personally present. मतलब कौन सा liaising head has to be present? Only the director R and later its successor co-secretary could meet these liaison contacts alone without the presence of the liaison division head. This arrangement changed in the 1990s when a decision was taken for whatever reason to allow the IB2 to have direct access to some of these liaison contacts. 1990 की बात कर रहे हैं. 1990 में कौन था? चंद्रशेखर साहब थे शायद, या वीपी सिंह साहब थे. वीपी सिंह थे मतलब बाकी गुजराल साहब रहे होंगे, वही गड़बड़ करते रहे सब कुछ. The foreign head. It was in the middle of November 1983 and I had not handed over charge of my two sensitive division. Gary successor told me that Cow wanted to meet the MI6 UK foreign intelligence agencies. देखिए यूके में दो इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसी, एक MI5 है जो डोमेस्टिक फ्रंट को देखती है और MI6 जो है वो फॉरेन फ्रंट को देखती है. Representative from the British High Commission, I picked up my MI6 contract and took him to Cow's office in the ground floor of the office block of the cabinet secretary in the southern wing of the Rashtriya Bhavan. वो MI6 के बंदे को जाकर के काउ साहब से मिलाने के लिए लेके गए, गैरी सक्सेना के कहने के हिसाब से. Cow, after I introduced the contract to him, asked me to wait in the room of the officer on special duty, Ratnakar Rao. जो एसडी थे रत्नाकर राव, उनके कमरे में जाकर के इनको बोला कि तुम जाके वहां पे रुको, और MI6 का जो एजेंट था उसे काव साहब खुद अकेले मिले. कौन है भाई? एक मिनट, कोई देर है कौन भैया? Just a minute, wait. Let me see who are you. तो दूंगा. अच्छा आप इधर हैं, ये आ जाइए.
Sorry sir.
नमस्कार. Sorry क्या होता है? Sorry. उससे sorry नहीं.
Much obliged for taking me in, sir. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
अरे I'm not a judge. क्या कुछ भी बुक करते रहते हो तो यहाँ पे प्रैक्टिस करते हो क्या? It is not a court. I'm obliged. वो वहीं पे छोड़ के आ जाया करो, जैसे कोर्ट प्रोमाइस से बाहर निकलते हो ना, ऑब्लाइज और माय लॉर्ड ये सब छोड़ दो वहां पे, सॉरी फॉर डिले दिस एंड दैट, कुछ नहीं। अच्छा हम लोग कहाँ थे?
पढ़ूं सर? मैं पढ़ता हूँ सर,
एक मिनट
आगे
एक मिनट।
यदि आप आज्ञा दे तो।
अरे रुको ना, आज कुछ क्या स्ट्रीम का बराबर दिखाई दे रही है क्या?
एकदम मुझे तो दिखाई दे रही है, मुझे दिखाई दे रही है।
तो मेरे में क्या गड़बड़ हो रहा है? मेरे को पेज ही नहीं दिखाई दे रहा ठीक से, जस्ट मिनट।
मुझे दिखाई दे रही है सर।
तो आपको दिखाई दे रहे पब्लिक? हाँ अब ठीक हो गया। वो
हम्म।
मैंने क्या किया था, इनलार्ज किया था ना, उसके बाद में वो इनलार्ज में जब
नहीं
60%
बढ़िया है, नहीं बहुत अच्छा है सर, बहुत ही बढ़िया है। आज्ञा
ये
दें तो मैं पढ़ूं सर?
जस्ट अ मिनट, कहाँ पे हूँ मैं पहले देखने दो। हाँ, काउ
इट
आफ्टर
वाज
इंट्रोड्यूस, हाँ ये पढ़ो।
जी। Cow, after I introduced the contact to him, asked me to wait in the room of the officer on special duty Ratnakar Rao. The meeting lasted for about an hour. I wondered what could have been the reason for Cow to ask me to keep away from the meeting. Due to some Operation 2 related work that Cow was doing at that time, it
नाउ
seemed as if.
Daga, the
Yes, sir.
procedure is, the SOP is that the liaising officer whose contact that agent is, he is supposed to be present over there. What is transpiring? But काउ ने क्या किया, सिद्धू साहब को बोला तुम बाहर जाके रत्नाकर राव के कमरे में वेट करो, and he says that I have not understood कि क्यों ऐसा किया उन्होंने। हाँ पढ़ो आगे। ड्यू टू
Yeah. तो इसीलिए बोल रहे हैं Cow to ask me to keep away from the meeting. Due to some Operation 2 related work that Cow was doing at that time, it seemed as if he was discussing something about Punjab. Just a month previously, on my return from New York, I had expressed to Gary Saxena my reservations on the way the situation in Punjab was being handled, or rather mishandled. Perhaps Cow, who must have been in the know of that, did not want me at the meeting with the MI6 representative. Incidentally, on my return to office, I informed Gary Saxena of Cow meeting my liaison contact alone, to which he did not react. Soon afterwards, I was
that means
handed
he
over
was
charge.
also in the Tupa, to which he did not react. Very important.
React.
हाँ.
Very important. Absolutely, sir. Soon afterwards, I handed over charge of the liaison division to my successor. B. Raman, in his book Cowboys of R&W, published in 2007, writes that to MI5, typo for MI6, मतलब टाइप करने में गलती किया होगा था, MI5, UK's domestic intelligence agency, did not have any declared representative in New Delhi at that time. जो डोमेस्टिक वाले थे वो तो दिल्ली में नहीं रहेंगे, एब्सोल्युटली। इंटेलिजेंस लियाजो ऑफिशियल्स, मतलब MI6 intelligence liaison officials at the British High Commission had scouted the Golden Temple complex in December 1983. बाप रे बाप,
Most
बड़ा
likely near
भयानक चीज।
GBS had
Most likely
resulted.
their visit had resulted. Most likely their visit had resulted from Cow's meeting in November 1983 with my MI6 liaison contact, and he might have been one of the two officers who visited the Golden Temple complex. The real purpose of that visit became clear when Phil Miller, an independent researcher and journalist, went to the British National Archives at Kew in Surrey, United Kingdom, looking for information on the involvement of the Special Air Services (SAS), the elite commando force of the UK, in Sri Lanka. Instead, he found some letters which showed a British connection to a planned Indian commando operation. According to these letters, declassified under the 30 Years' Rule, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had agreed a request routed through the Chief of MI6 from the Indian Intelligence Coordinator, R.N. Cow, to send an officer of the UK's elite commando force SAS to Delhi to advise the Indian government on expulsion of Sikh militants from the Golden Temple. Miller
बाप
post
रे क्या
ये तो
यार,
भयानक चीज है बहुत।
उफ,
Miller
उफ.
posted this information on a blog, highlighting the post colonial role played by the UK in ongoing conflicts around the world.
मतलब हम कहने के लिए आजाद हो गए थे, फिर भी वो उंगली कर ही रहे थे
एकदम
हर जगह पे।
इससे तो सरासर प्रूव हो रहा है सर। without any question. सरासर प्रूव हो रहा है कि how much interference even at that time was there. Miller posted this information on a blog, highlighting the post-colonial role played by the UK in ongoing conflicts around the world. He referred to the apparent hypocrisy of Indira Gandhi, who the letters show was highly critical of the involvement of British intelligence personnel in Sri Lanka, only to request the assistance herself at a later date. This revelation, posted by Miller on his blog on 13th of January 2014, was immediately picked up by the British press. Following this revelation, leaders of UK Sikh community and some members of the
अच्छा
House of
हुआ ये कि
हाँ, हाँ,
2014 में इनका ये ब्लॉग आ गया था, उसके बाद में सिद्धू साहब अपनी बुक लिख रहे हैं। अच्छा हुआ इनको भी इंफॉर्मेशन मालूम पड़
अरे
गई।
इनको उड़ा देता पूरा।
हाँ,
Following this revelation, leaders of UK Sikh community and some members of the House of Commons, especially those representing constituencies of large Sikh populations, objected to such a collaboration and to the alleged role of the SAS advisor in the planning of Operation Blue Star. Fearing a backlash, Prime Minister David Cameron ordered an inquiry by Cabinet Secretary Jeremy Haywood. Haywood consulted around 200 files, which included more than 23,000 documents covering the period from December 1983 to June 1984. But some documents had been destroyed in 2009 as a part of a process that allowed the Ministry of Defense to review files after 25 years. The Cabinet Secretary also published details from 5 additional documents and interviewed former Foreign Secretary Lord Howe, former Home Secretary Lord Britton, and Margaret Thatcher's former Private Secretary Lord Butler of Brockwell. The Haywood report was presented in the British Parliament by Foreign Secretary William Hague on 4th of February 2014. Hague admitted that one SAS officer had visited India from 8th of February to 17th of February 1984 and had conducted a ground recce of the Golden Temple with some members of the Indian Special Forces, SFF. The officer's advice was that a military operation should only be put into effect as a last resort when all attempts at negotiation had failed. It recommended including any operation an element of surprise and the use of helicopter-borne forces in the interests of reducing casualties and bringing about a swift resolution. Quoting the Haywood report, Hague mentioned that with a view to reducing casualties, the UK military advisor recommended assaulting all objectives simultaneously, thereby assuring surprise and momentum. The advice given to the Indian authorities identified the use of sufficient helicopters and the capability to insert troops by helicopter as critical requirements for this approach. Further, the UK advice also focused on the command and control arrangements and nighttime coordination of paramilitary with the Indian Special Group Forces. The report mentioned that there were significant differences between the plan proposed by the SAS and the eventual operation that was mounted, that is Blue Star. The UK's assistance was purely advisory and given months beforehand. It noted Operation Blue Star was a ground assault without an element of surprise and without a helicopter-borne element. The British Cabinet Secretary's report concluded that the SAS officer's advice had limited impact on Operation Blue Star. It also tried to underline the absence of British involvement in the eventual Operation Blue Star by publishing correspondence between Indira Gandhi and Margaret Thatcher dated 14th of June and 29th of June 2014, which did not make any such mention.
क्या बोल रही है?
It also tried to underline the absence of British involvement.
भाई
रिपोर्ट में
ओके
हाँ,
जो पब्लिशिंग की डेट बोल रहा है 14 से लेकर के
हाँ,
19 तक हाँ पब्लिश किया उसको। अच्छा
correspondence जो चल रहा था ना 14th of June 29, which did
नहीं
not
नहीं
make any such mention.
These-
नहीं
these-
इसमें देखिए
these-
this was
these were
omitted
published,
ना
2014 बोल रहे हैं ना, these
हाँ
correspondence were
2014
published।
हाँ, which
वो
did
तो
not make any such
1984 में
mention.
हुआ था ना, 30 साल के बाद में पब्लिश हुआ ये 14 से 29 तक के बीच में, ये है जो करस्पॉन्डेंट दोनों के बीच का है, ये है
जी।
which did not
And
make
the
any
such mention. Any analysis concluded by the British military for Haywood also concluded that the eventual operation was carried out by the Indian Army in June 1984 in a wholly different way from what was suggested by the SAS. Furor in British Parliament. When details of this inquiry were revealed in the House of Commons, there were shouts of shame from the ruling Conservative Party benches too. John MacDonald, the Labour MP for Hayes and Harlington, should said Britain should apologize because it had willingly provided military support to desecrate Sikhism's holiest site. William Hague accused MacDonald of wild distortion, pointing out that the SS officer who was sent to India in 1984 had provided advice to the Indian Intelligence Service (R&AW) and its special group SFF with the aim of minimizing casualties. This was ignored when the Indian Army took charge of Operation Blue Star and stormed into the Golden Temple in June that year. Haig also said there was no evidence that the SS officer was sent to India to help British defense sales to India. Defense sales to India. But Tom Watson, a former Labour minister, said the House of Commons had been told that a protest march by the UK Sikhs to commemorate victims of Operation Blue Star was not permitted on public order grounds. He also quoted from newly released cabinet minutes from that time, which said, in view of the importance of the British political and commercial interests at stake, it would be necessary to explore every possibility of preventing the march taking place. Export contracts worth £5 billion could be at stake. To this, Haig told Watson that the cabinet secretary was making a different point about a different event because there was no evidence in the files that Britain provided military advice to boost defense sales. Douglas Alexander, Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, said Labour welcomes what light the Cabinet Secretary's report sheds on the allegations of British involvement in Operation Blue Star. But despite the publication of this report, serious questions will continue to be asked. He went on to say, it remains unclear, for example, why the government has today chosen to publish Mrs. Gandhi's letter to Mrs. Thatcher, but not Mrs. Thatcher's letter to Mrs. Gandhi. The pain, तो selective तो होंगे और there's always a red herring thrown around. The pain and suffering still felt by many about the tragic events of 1984 places a particular duty on the government to provide what answers it can to address very genuine concerns. Winding up the debate, Prime Minister David Cameron said, I hope the manner in which we have investigated these dreadful events will provide some reassurance to the Sikh community here in Britain and elsewhere. He said a single UK military officer provided some advice, but critically, this advice was not followed. It was a one-off. It is beyond the scope of this book to ascertain how much defense equipment the UK was able to sell to India, or for that matter, the kind of economic or diplomatic advantage some similarly placed Western countries might have taken of India in view of this self-created problem of India's. However,
they are
Margaret,
they are real enemies of the, yeah. And they were prime minister and president.
G. However, Margaret Thatcher was able to persuade Rajiv Gandhi to buy 21 Westland 30 helicopters for £65 million under a UK grant and aid scheme. Thatcher's Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, wanted the Scotland Yard to ban protests planned by the British Sikh groups, including the Republic of Khalistan, because a Sikh march in present circumstances would carry very serious risk both for Indo-British relations and law and order in this country. British High Commissioner to India, Robert Wade Grey, informed the Foreign Office that the celebration by British Sikhs in the UK following Indira Gandhi's assassination could have a direct impact on this deal. Geoffrey Howe's private secretary, Leonard Appleyard, was more specific when he sent a note to the Home Office saying contracts which would be potentially at risk from a trade boycott amount to some £5 billion. Finally, India bought 21 of the Westland helicopters, which were inducted into the Pawan Hans fleet in 1986 to fly from Mumbai to offshore oil rigs and to ferry pilgrims to the Vaishno Devi shrine from Jammu. Two of these helicopters, nicknamed Flying Coffins, crashed, one in 1988 in Jammu and one in 1989 in Nagaland, killing 10. The troubled fleet was grounded soon after, following endless wrangling over the oblivious design flaws. Snatch and grab. मैं कुछ भी बेच देते हैं.
दादा बहुत तकलीफ है, ये तो किताब पढ़ते पढ़ते तकलीफ हो रहा है, दुख हो रहा है.
मैं कुछ भी देखिए, इन लोग जो बेच रहे हैं हम लोग को हेलीकॉप्टर, तो उसका मतलब कुछ ट्रायल नहीं, कुछ नहीं, टेस्टिंग नहीं, हम लोग भी ले रहे हैं विदाउट डूइंग एनीथिंग, presuming that since it's being sent by Britain, manufactured there, it will be all right. और उसके बाद ये हो रहा है, फ्लाइंग कॉफिन्स इसका नाम दिया गया. And those helicopter had obvious design flaws.
पहले मैं इस पेज को ये इस पैरा को मैं सॉरी चैप्टर को ओमिट कर रहा था, लेकिन जब मैंने फिर से पढ़ा तो मैं बोला नहीं, इसको रखना है, जरूरी है.
ये भी जानना जरूरी है सर. देखिए, एसएस को इन्वॉल्व कराया गया, फिर बोला गया कि पब्लिकली बोला गया नहीं वो तो ऐसे डिफेंस डील के लिए आए थे, जबकि कुछ नहीं था उसमें, ना कहीं रिपोर्ट पब्लिश हुई, ना कुछ बताया गया. Snatch and grab, taking a lead from these revelations in the British press and in the investigative report by journalist Sandeep Unnithan appeared in India Today in its issue of 31st of January 2014. It said, a snatch and grab heli-borne top secret operation codenamed Operation Sundown to grab and whisk away Bhideranwale from his Guru Nanak Niwas hideout was planned by the Director General Security and presented to Indira Gandhi for her approval at a residential office, 1 Akbar Road, in the presence of senior advisor R.N. Kao. However, Gandhi shot it down, citing unaffordable civilian casualties that could result from it. Though the article was an excellent piece of investigative journalism, it had a few discrepancies, a major one being that when the operation was planned, Bhideranwale had already shifted to the Akal Takht and was no longer at Guru Nanak Niwas. Second, the plan was to grab him while he was delivering his sermon from the langar roof and not from his room in Guru Nanak Niwas. It may be mentioned here that this was not the first attempt or plan by the SFF or the Indian Army or security forces to arrest or abduct Bhideranwale from his hideouts. One such attempt at getting the army involved in his arrest from Chowk Mehta Gurdwara after Lala Jagat Narayan's murder in September 1981 has been described in Chapter 3. Kao was even planning an SSF-led heli-borne operation to abduct Bhideranwale from Chowk Mehta before the latter shifted to Guru Nanak Niwas on 19th of July 1982. Sometime in the second half of June 1982, Director Raw Santu called me to ascertain if it would be feasible for me to do a casting, reconnaissance and preparation of a detailed map of the targeted area.
Please mind it, casing. अब इसके बाद
Sorry, casing.
Casing की word use कर रहा
है. Casing, which means
casing word use कर रहा है. बाकी कोई इसको पूरा नहीं. Casing को इन्होंने समझा दिया यहाँ पर क्या होता है. Casing is what? Reconnaissance and preparation. Detailed map of the targeted area. That is casing.
To do a casing.
It should not be confused with Reiki. Huh? Casing means it is legal, authorized.
Ji.
फिर
of the Chowk Mehta complex. After a detailed discussion of the pros and cons of my casing visit, I told Santuk that there was every chance of my being recognized by somebody at the complex, which could in turn alert Bhideranwale about the likelihood of such an operation. I later learned that someone else from the RAW had actually sent to case the Chowk Mehta complex under the guise of a reporter, but he was chased out as a suspected intelligence agent. Most likely, it was this visit of a RAW officer, followed by the arrest of Amrik Singh and Thara Singh on 19th of July 1982, that prompted Bhideranwale to seek refuge in the safety of Guru Nanak Niwas. To this day, I have not been able to figure out the real motive behind the casing operation. Possibly, Cow wanted to collect all relevant information well in advance, which could be useful when a decision to abduct Bhideranwale from Chowk Mehta was taken by the PM. Or the One Akbar Road group thought Bhideranwale's stature needed a further boost through a dramatic abduction, or they wanted
this is the point
Bhideranwale.
more correct.
This is
यही गलत
more
है।
appropriate. A further boost through a dramatic abduction, or they wanted
अरे Bhideranwale को
Bhideranwale,
अपडेट कर लिया, अब छोड़ो छोड़ो छोड़ो, उसको ये हो जाता, उसके बाद फिर छोड़ देते, भैया जाओ, क्या करें, पब्लिक प्रेशर आ रहा है।
or they wanted Bhideranwale to be suitably alerted that Chowk Mehta was no longer safe. That was perhaps the reason why an easily identifiable person like me was the first choice for the casing operation. The job could easily have been done by someone else without being noticed, as it was later done by DGS R.T. Nagarani to plan an SSF-led commando operation at the Golden Temple in April 1984.
Dada, एक मिनट. Now
जी, जी.
here Sidhu Sahab is demolishing cow structure like anything. Cow के बारे में इतना इज्जत है, ये है वो है. But he says that he was also a pimp of Indira, ना?
Definitely, without any question. क्योंकि हम लोग तो शुरू से पढ़ रहे हैं पूरा चीज, तो everything is joining together and pointing out to the entire coterie of people who had been created, specially inducted, retained, made to do act as per the bidding of Mrs. Gandhi, just to create this situation resulting in the commando operation.
Next.
For the One Akbar group, Bhideranwale's move
to Guru Nanak Niwas. Group use कर रहे हैं वो, gang छोड़ दिया.
सर देखिए ये क्या बोल रहे हैं सर, देखिए, for the One Akbar Road group, Bhideranwale's move to Guru Nanak Niwas had several advantages. First, Bhideranwale could carry out his extremist activities without any real threat of being arrested by the police. The Niwas, though not a part of the Golden Temple complex, provide a better cover, being an official guest house of the SGPC, where police would normally not enter without approval from the concerned central government authorities, which was not that easy to get. Second, anything said or done by Bhideranwale or his followers on his behalf from the Niwas or the temple complex would attract greater attention in national and international media. देखिए कितना प्लानिंग है. Third, his presence at Guru Nanak Niwas was expected to build pressure on the moderate Akali leadership led by Longowal to keep the pot boiling in Punjab. Planning Operation Sundown. I met Ram Tekchand Nagarani, former DGS, at his Vasant Vihar residence on 16th of April 2019, and a couple of times after that too, to seek his views on the SSF heli-borne operation that had been planned by the Directorate General of Security. Born in 1928, Nagarani is over 90 years old now. He has a serious heart problem. He had a serious heart problem in November 2014 when he was hospitalized for 6 days. Though physically somewhat weak, he regularly went for morning walks and played bridge at Vasant Vihar Club in the afternoons. Fortunately for me, he still remembered crucial details of the planned SSF-led heli-borne operation to abduct Bhideranwale from the Golden Temple complex in April 1984. An IPS officer of the 1951 batch, Andhra cadre, Nagarani came on deputation to the Government of India at SP rank, first to the CRPF. Soon afterwards, he joined the Intelligence Bureau as Assistant Director in charge of the SFF. On bifurcation of the Intelligence Bureau and creation of the Research and Analysis Wing in September 1968, he moved over to the RAW, where he served in various capacities, both in India and abroad. He finally took over as DGS in 1982. Normally, the director of the RAW used to be ex officio DGS2, but as Nagrani was a 1951 IPS regular recruitment officer, and as director, Gary Saxena, entering service through the special recruitment quota, was given the 1950, 51, and 52
51 and 52.
seniority. It was decided to give independent charge of DGS to Nagrani to oversee the affairs of the SFF, the Special Service Bureau (SSB), and the Aviation Research Center (ARC). The SSF, in addition to having a large contingent of persons of Tibetan origin, meant specifically for Tibet-related operations, had a highly trained professional commando unit to deal with hostage-taking or other serious situations resulting from terrorist activities. This commando unit comprised 150 young men, 50% of them on short-term deputation from the army, and the rest from the BSF and CRPF. The cell had two Mi-4 helicopters for heli-borne operations. Besides, it had the facility to use suitable aircraft from the Aviation Research Center as and when required. Incidentally, when the Sikkim Guards were being disarmed by the Indian Army on 9th of April 1975 at Gangtok, Nagrani, a staff officer to the RAW Secretary R.N. Kao, had called me to seek a blow-by-blow account of the disarming operation for the benefit of his boss. Soon after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, Nagrani was asked to raise a distinct new commando force, the National Security Guard, as its first Director General. He raised it with the help of some SFF commandos and clerical and ministerial staff who formed the core of the newly created outfit. Nagrani told,
एक
जी सर, जी
ये
सर,
सिंधी लोग भी इतने हिम्मत वाले होते हैं और इतने टफ होते हैं. नागरानी इज सिंधी.
जी जी जी, नाम से तो जितना
नहीं,
ये
मैं तो मुंबई में रहा हूँ, मेरे साथ में
हाँ
ऑफिसर
हाँ
थे
पता है मुझे,
उल्लासनगर
अरे
वाले.
हाँ हाँ, वासवानी,
हाँ,
आपका जेठमलानी, सब तो वही सब है.
मोटवानी, मटियानी,
मोटवानी,
ये
हाँ
सारे के सारे.
हाँ.
हाँ, सारे. नागरानी टोल्ड
तो
मी.
हाँ, Nagrani told me, एक मेरे बगल में थे डॉक्टर साहब, तोलानी साहब, वो उल्लासनगर से आते थे. Nagrani told me that it was towards the end of December 1983 that Kao called him to his office and asked him to plan an SSF-led heli-borne operation to abduct Bhideranwale from the roof of the Golden Temple's Langar dining complex, where he delivered daily sermons till late evening, and whisk him away with the help of the CRPF. Nagrani confirmed to me the planned operation included an SSF unit and two Mi-4 helicopters and the use of bulletproof vehicles to take Bhideranwale out of the complex from an adjoining road after he was captured. For that, Nagrani had requested a three-layered CRPF cordon of the area to be put in place just before the heli-borne commandos were to strike. Before the operation was planned, Nagrani selected a civilian employee of the SFF and assigned him the task of spending a few days at the Golden Temple complex. The employee's task was to prepare a detailed sketch map with special emphasis on the Langar area and mark the most suitable points of entry and exit. He was also to observe the activities and movements of Bhideranwale and his armed guards from his residence in the Akal Takht to the Langar complex rooftop. The observer was asked to suggest the most suitable time and place for Bhideranwale's abduction by heli-borne commandos. With all this information gathered in 3 or 4 days, a model of the Golden Temple complex highlighting the Langar area nearby escape routes were prepared in Sarsawa near Saharanpur in UP.
मतलब सरसावा से हेलीकॉप्टर उड़ेगा ना, ये बोल रहे हैं ये लोग. हाँ?
नहीं, ये बोल रहा है मॉडल बना गया था, ये बाद में समझ में आएगा कहाँ से उड़ा
This
है.
information gathered in 3 or 4 days, a model of
The Golden Temple complex highlighting the Langar area and nearby escape routes was बनाया, मॉडल बनाया.
एक्सरसाइज करने के लिए देखते हैं.
हाँ, मिलिट्री वाले जो बनाते हैं ना मॉडल्स. हाँ,
मैं पढ़ते पढ़ते सोचा, मैंने कहा सरसावा से हेलीकॉप्टर उड़ाएंगे तो पब्लिक को मालूम नहीं पड़ जाएगा सरसावा से
मैंने बताया नहीं, वो आगे देख लेता ना हम लोग कहाँ से फिर क्या हो. The following were the salient features of that operation. Just before the heli-borne commandos were to approach the Golden Temple complex, a sufficient number of armed CRPF personnel would throw a cordon around the complex to prevent entry and exit of people and material till the operation was over. Two teams of SSF commandos traveling in two low-flying Mi-4 helicopters would approach the spot where Bhideranwale addressed his sermon on the roof as his talk was about to end. Taking advantage of the lax security around Bhideranwale at that moment, the two teams would rope down. मतलब हेलीकॉप्टर से रस्सी पकड़कर उतरते हैं तो वैसे ही प्लानिंग किया पूरा,
जो बॉम्बे में किया था ना कनाडा हाउस के ऊपर.
हाँ जी. Some of the commandos would rush towards Bhideranwale and grab him, while the rest would neutralize his armed security guards, who would naturally react as soon as they saw the commandos, possibly even before they landed on the rooftop. Simultaneously, the remaining SSF commandos and the CRPF personnel would divide themselves into two lots. One would enter the Golden Temple complex to block Bhideranwale's access to the sanctum in case he escaped.
जब वो लंगर के टाइम में वहां पे भाषण दे रहा होता है और ये हेलीकॉप्टर की जब आवाज आएगी तो सारे के सारे तो वहां से हट जाएंगे.
अलर्ट तो हो ही जाएंगे. तो
कुछ भी चलो ठीक है, प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं ना वो लोग.
प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं. From the langar roof and capture him. The second lot would reach the road between the langar complex and Guru Nanak Niwas in bulletproof vehicles, take charge of the captured Bhideranwale from the heli-borne commandos and whisk him away to a determined place where he would be handed over to the authorities concerned. Nobody knows who these authorities are. The heli-borne.
इंदिरा जी खुद आएंगी पर्सनली, उसको लेके जाएंगी, चल तेरे को प्रेसिडेंट हाउस में बिठा देते हैं और जज के साथ.
हाँ जी. जैसे कश्मीर बदमाश को किया था ना, वो क्या
यासीन मलिक.
अरे हाँ, प्राइम मिनिस्टर के साथ जिसका फोटो है अपना क्या बोल मोनी बाबा के साथ. The heli-borne and ground-based SSF commandos were specifically instructed that Bhideranwale should in no case be allowed to go towards the Harmandir Sahib sanctum to take refuge, as capturing him from there without causing damage to the building would not be possible, and causing damage to the main Harmandir Sahib structure was unacceptable. According to Nagrani, the Golden Temple complex model used to plan the operation along with the SSF personnel being trained was shifted to the National Capital Region of Delhi towards the end of March 1984 to facilitate closer cooperation with the CRPF. Nagrani distinctly recalled the visit of the advisor from SAS. देखिए ब्रिटिश वाले का बात कर रहा है, SAS. He specifically mentioned that the advice given by the advisor was meant exclusively for the SSF heli-borne operation and not for the army-led Operation Blue Star, which was not even at the planning stage at the time. The Operation Blue Star was not at the planning stage. This heli-borne operation was at the planning stage. He, however, mentioned that as it turned out,
बैक बर्नर में होगा, प्लान बी होगा, लेकिन
जी
ये जानबूझ के बताना नहीं चाह रहे हैं, क्योंकि वहाँ पे प्लान बी तो रहता ही है. प्लान ए फेल हो जाएगा तो प्लान बी रहता ही है.
जी प्लान सी तक रहता है.
प्लान बी मिलिट्री के साथ में किया हुआ ना, उस पर राव वाले क्यों?
बिल्कुल सर. He, however, mentioned that as it turned out, his SSF commandos were later requisitioned by Lieutenant General K. Sundarji for Operation Blue Star at short notice.
देखा ये हुआ ना.
जी.
They were in loop, but ये नहीं मालूम था कि राव वाले क्या कर रहे हैं, मिलिट्री वाले क्या कर रहे हैं. सब जगह वो गड़बड़ चल रही थी उनकी. In early April 1984.
Briefing Indira Gandhi. In early April 1984, R.N. Kao told Nagrani that Indira Gandhi wanted a briefing on the heli-borne operation at 1 Akbar Road at her private office wing adjoining her residence, 1 Safdarjung Road. Nagrani was initially hesitant.
Was her residence, and this was private office, Akbar Road.
1 Akbar Road. Nagrani was initially hesitant and did not want to brief her. He therefore requested Cow to brief the PM personally, since Cow was also fully conversant with the
उसको
details of
मालूम
the
नहीं
operation.
इसको कौन जाके बताएगा? तुम ही जाओ, बताओ, तुम बताना होगा.
Ultimately, however, Nagrani relented and briefed her in Cow's presence. After the briefing, the PM pointedly asked Nagrani about the number of casualties that could be expected. Nagrani said he could lose both the helicopters and about 20% of the commandos.
Point blank, straight forward.
Gee.
Yes.
Indira Gandhi then specifically asked him about the possibility of civilian casualties. Nagrani had no answer to that. The operation would coincide with Baisakhi, April 13th, celebrations at the Golden Temple. He could not guess how many civilians might be present at the time. Finally, he said that about 20% of the civilians coming in the way of the operation could also be killed. The PM said she could not afford such a large number of civilian casualties. The operation was killed then and there. Yeah, important. The operation was killed then and there. When I asked Nagrani about the selection of Baisakhi Day for the operation, he said nobody at that time thought of postponing or bringing forward the date of the operation. Significantly, towards the end of the briefing, Indira Gandhi, in a pensive mood, remarked that she knew that sooner or later she would be killed by Sikh extremists, but she was not worried about that. Her main concern was what would happen to her children after her death. अब जो हो गया सो हो गया, और क्या, ये चिड़िया चुग गई खेत.
मतलब in approach itself he was doing,
जी. Let us examine the number of casualties that would have resulted from this operation. An Mi-4 helicopter can carry between 8 to 16 passengers. Let us assume that two SSF Mi-4 helicopters were carrying 12 fully equipped commandos each for the operation. If the casualty rate were 20%, then 5 of the 24 commandos would be lost. Let us also assume that around 300 persons, including Bhideranwale's 10 guards, constituted his audience on the Langa complex rooftop at the time of the operation. The normal reaction of the civilians would be to run for cover or escape on seeing the helicopters approach. Even if we presume that all the 300 people came in the way of the operation, the total civilian casualties would amount to 60 persons per the estimate. As the exit route would already have been sanitized by the CRPF, nobody would have come in the way of the commandos leaving with Bhideranwale from the side road. Both Cow and Nagrani were very cautious in projecting such estimates and would not have made tall claims or promised what they could not deliver. Given their propensity to err on the side of caution, even the estimates of expected casualties shared by Nagrani with the Prime Minister at the special briefing would have been on the higher side. Contrast the estimate losses from this operation with the horrific loss of life and the scale of destruction eventually caused by Operation Blue Star. MPS Olak, IPS, 1970 Gujarat cadre, held charge of the crucial post of Assistant Director at the Subsidiary Intelligence Bureau, SIB Amritsar, from 1982 to 1985. In that capacity, he was in the know of Bhideranwale's day-to-day activities and related developments. A nephew of a close friend, Olak was known to me since his school days at Patiala. He recently told me that if the government wanted to abduct Bhideranwale and take him away to a predetermined place, it was not very difficult. This was because Bhideranwale had a fixed routine of going on foot from the Akal Takht to the roof of the Langa complex and returning the same way. He was always accompanied by 8 to 10 armed men who would hang around him casually without any apprehension of being attacked or arrested. Prime Minister का आदमी है, President का आदमी है. If the day and time for such an operation had been carefully chosen, when there were fewer pilgrims in the complex, the number of civilian casualties would have been minimal. In fact, moderate Akali leaders and most of the general public of Punjab would have welcomed such a move, as they were getting sick of the continued instability in the state resulting from Bhideranwale's activities. Was Indira Gandhi's rejection of the SSF operation motivated only by a concern for civilian casualties, or was there another reason of which Nagrani was not aware? If one were to take this question a step further, would the abduction of Bhinder at this juncture have helped the Congress win the upcoming Lok Sabha elections? Actually, as per information obtained from the Punjab government through the Ministry of Home Affairs by RTI activist Navdeep Gupta in 2017, till the day Bhinder died, there was neither any actionable first information report (FIR) lodged against him, nor any criminal case pending against him. Gupta is of the view that Bhinder was basically Bhindranwale's was basically a political murder. Gupta's search for the truth behind Operation Blue Star continues with a view to bringing the guilty to the court of justice. From the point of view of the One Akbar Road group, Bhinder had done the job for which his help had been enlisted. Bhinder alive and in detention at the time, would have been a liability for the government. His arrest, even under the most dramatic circumstances, would not have ended militancy in Punjab. On the contrary, he could have spilled the beans about his connections with some senior Congress leaders ही होगा.
कहाँ लेके जा रहे हैं भाई साहब? मतलब अब यह है कि द पर्पस ऑफ भिंडरवाले इज सर्व, तो उसको मारना है कैसे भी करके,
किसी भी हाँ, so that he won't spill the beans.
हाँ,
On the contrary, he could have spilled the beans about his contacts with senior Congress leaders. His arrest could also have provided a reason for Sikh militants to fan out in Punjab and target innocent Hindus in retaliation. It would have been difficult, if not impossible, to control that situation before the elections, which were due within the next 8 months. Obviously, the One Akbar Road group would not have done anything to jeopardize their chances at the hustings. It was time for Bhinder to go. The precise time and the manner in which the final solution would be implemented remained to be worked out. In view of his ferocious image, so very carefully cultivated over the last 3 years, Bhinder could not be seen to have gone meekly. His last fight had to be befitting his image, so people could realize what a tough enemy he was. It would therefore appear that the Akal Takht's fortification through the smuggling of arms was deliberately overlooked. Sir, it would therefore appear that the Akal Takht's fortification through the smuggling of arms was deliberately overlooked, so that when the time came for the final solution, Bhinder should go fighting till the last man. और हमारे सिपाही मरे उसका कोई फिक्र नहीं है. सबसे पहले एक सिख ऑफिसर गया था सर.
क्या बताएं यार, क्या है? It
would thus appear that Indira Gandhi's rejection of the SSF operation was based on these considerations rather than on her concern for the lives of innocent civilians. This would become evident from the way Operation Blue Star was conceived, approved, and ruthlessly executed without any concern for civilian casualties or for its impact on the stability of a strategic state like Punjab and of the nation as a whole.
His last fight had to be befitting his image so people could realize what a tough enemy he was. It would therefore appear that the Akal Takht's fortification through the smuggling of arms was deliberately overlooked, so that when the time comes from the final solution, okay,
a great opportunity for optics.
ये तो साले लास्ट को भी बेचे खा जाएं यार, क्या मतलब?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
क्या बोलेंगे इनको? वल्चर क्या बोलेंगे? वेंचर तो आप लोग एक्सकेवेंजर बोल रहे थे ना.
वल्चर
ये तो बड़ा कुछ भी है.
उससे भी गायब हो रहा है. उससे भी गायब हो रहा है. पढ़ने से आदमी पागल हो जाएगा एकदम.
मतलब मुझे तो ये नहीं, मतलब आई एम थिंकिंग अबाउट सिद्धू साहब के क्या
हिम्मत करके लिखे हैं तो
यार, क्या बीता
हिम्मत करके लिखे हैं तो
उफ उफ हमको पढ़ करके इतना तकलीफ हो रही है, वो तो लिख रहे हैं, he has faced
नहीं,
it.
लिख रहा है कि he has seen it himself and gone through the rigors of the moments,
Yes.
the situation prevailing at that time. इसीलिए तो बोला था कि हटा दीजिए मुझे, मेरे को
Viewers,
करना ही नहीं।
please, whenever you get a chance, please go through this video. Please like it and share it with your friend circle and others, so that they come to know. Everybody is not
Definitely.
having that opportunity to read this book. We have procured this book only for you, so that, and we are reading each and every sentence and word of it, so that
And
nothing
analyzing
is
at the
missed.
same, and that's at the same time analyzing the situation.
बाप रे, अभी थोड़ा सा ब्रेक ले लो, ब्राह्मण साहब से बात कर लेते हैं, फिर 10 में जाएंगे बाद में।
हाँ, इसमें आराम से, ये तो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट है। पीसी अलेक्जेंडर, अरुण कंवर, बी रमन।
हाँ,
राहुल सर नमस्कार। नमस्कारम।
मैं थोड़ी देर के लिए इसको जो स्क्रीनिंग को शेयर को बंद कर देता हूँ, बाद में फिर वहीं से
जी
खोलेंगे।
सर, जी सर, जी सर।
क्या साहब नमस्कार, गुड मॉर्निंग, गुड आफ्टरनून, गुड नाइट, जो भी बोलना है बोलो। क्या ये तो कल से मेरा सिर दर्द कर रहा है, मैंने पूरा पढ़ा इसको तो
नमस्कारम, नमस्कारम,
नमस्कारम, नमस्कारम। कौन यात्रा कर रहा है?
नहीं,
निखिल जी,
मेरा सिर दर्द कर
निखिल
रहा है,
जी।
मैंने कल पढ़ा ना इसको।
किधर जा रहे हैं?
क्या बोल रहे हैं?
नहीं, निखिल जी एक मैसेज भेजे थे कि मैं ज्वाइन नहीं कर पाऊंगा क्योंकि मैं ट्रैवल कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा 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 अच्छा, ओके ओके। मैं वो किधर मैसेज है, वो स्ट्रीम में है क्या?
हाँ जी, अपना नहीं, स्क्रीन में नहीं है, अपना जो है ना
ग्रुप में,
स्ट्रीम में, ग्रुप में। जी
है, ग्रुप को बात के ग्रुप में वो देखना। हाँ,
ये हो गया, खालिस्तान का हो गया?
नहीं हुआ कहाँ सर, अभी तो शुरू ही किए हैं।
अच्छा, पढ़ो फिर पढ़ो।
अच्छा, ये छतरपुर जा रहे हैं, छतरपुर जा रहे हैं,
हाँ जी,
आगे
हाँ
तो
जी।
कहाँ जा रहे हैं? ओके। हाँ। अरे रावण साहब, क्या पढ़ो, दिमाग खराब हो रहा है। अब वो पढ़ रहे हैं, मैं तो यहाँ पर दिमाग लगा, मैं कल पे पढ़ के बैठा हूँ। बाप रे, इतना ज्यादा कॉन्स्पिरेसी। उफ। एंड पब्लिक, इंडियन पब्लिक इज इडियट, जानती नहीं कुछ। ये बुढ़ा 2014 में जो वहां पर ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट के चक्कर में वहां पे जो पब्लिश हुआ है, अगर ये उससे पहले लिख दिया होता तो इसका सत्यानाश हो जाता।
मर जाता ये तुरंत।
जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ सेलिंग सम हेलीकॉप्टर्स, उनको यहाँ पे हेलीबर्न ऑपरेशन करवाना था।
अच्छा, that to a poor grade,
हाँ,
that to a poor grade, poor quality, and at the same time calling the
बॉम्बे हाई के
SAS।
जाने के टाइम में ओएनजीसी के एम्प्लॉइज कितनी बार वो कूदा है, समुद्र में गिरा है, वहां पे मरे हैं ओएनजीसी के। वो ये सिद्धू साहब लिख नहीं रहे। बॉम्बे में जो जाता है ना वो हेलीकॉप्टर
हाँ
रिग
हाँ
में,
हाँ,
तो वो
जी,
भी तो
जी।
गिरे हैं पानी में, यही तो थे वेस्टलैंड हेलीकॉप्टर। और फिर वेस्टलैंड
अगस्टा
हेलीकॉप्टर से सोनिया
वेस्टलैंड।
गांधी ने भी वही किया, समझौता किया उसको।
और एक बात रावण सर को बताइए, हम बोल रहे हैं कि हम आजाद हो गए हैं, अब हेल्प किससे ले रहे हैं हम? ब्रिटिश इंटेलिजेंस सर्विसेज, ब्रिटिश इंटेलिजेंस से ले रहे हैं हेल्प। उनका आदमी आ रहा है, उनका आदमी आ रहा है, पूरा प्लानिंग कर रहा है, सब कर रहा है बैकडोर से। क्या बोला यार, बताइए। मुझे तो ये मालूम नहीं था, जितना पढ़ रहा हूँ उतना ही मतलब दिमाग खराब हो रहा है।
चलो आगे चलते हैं।
जी सर।
आगे तो ये तीनों गाली दे रहा है, काव को और रमन को तीनों गाली दे रहा है, अलेक्जेंडर को गाली दे रहा है।
अलेक्जेंडर को भी। हाँ जी। सर हाँ, आ गया। In this chapter, I will examine Very briefly, the roles played in Operation 2 by P.C. Alexander, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, R.N. Kao, Senior Advisor, and B. Raman, a Senior Raw Officer, during the period from early 1981 to November 1984. Their respective working styles were also, to a large extent, symptomatic of the three different ways of functioning of government servants in the country. अच्छा जूता हमारा है मतलब अपने अपने हिसाब से तीनों चल रहे थे क्योंकि तीनों अलग अलग काम कर रहे थे ना
तीनों
सिम्टोमैटिक
तीनों
इसीलिए
मैडम
नहीं उनका सर लैंग्वेज देखिए सिम्टोमैटिक ऑफ द थ्री डिफरेंट वेज ऑफ फंक्शनिंग ऑफ गवर्नमेंट सर्वेंट्स इन द कंट्री. The first category comprised those who would do anything to please their bosses in the hope that the services would be suitably rewarded at an appropriate time. While nursing such ambitions, they acted as front persons, created deniability, did their best to cover their tracks, and justified controversial actions taken by or on behalf of their bosses under all circumstances.
दादा, let me
जी.
put it this way that this book is essential for each and every government servant, that is upright government servant जो है honest है
जी जी
उनको
जी
भी
जी
चाहिए कि किस तरीके से आदमी किस तरीके से कैसा करता है, तो the behavior of the boss is superior will be understood by them अगर इस किताब को पढ़ेंगे वो लोग.
जी जी लेकिन आप तो अपने अनुभव से पहले ये चीज बताएं, मे बी नॉट इन सो मेनी वर्ड्स बट यू हैव कन्वेड द मैसेज इन ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट इन योर
जिसने
वीडियोस.
पर्सनली फेस किया है उसकी तो बात अलग है. मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ कि मेरे पास में इतना वो तो नहीं है कि मैं बुक लिख सकूं और ये करूं. जो ये बुक मिल रही है तो इसको पढ़ लो. जो एक ऑनेस्ट ऑफिसर होता है, अपराइट ऑफिसर होता है, वो क्या फेस करता है और जो चमचे होते हैं वो किस तरीके से आगे जाकर के
देखिए ना, create deniability, did their best to cover their tracks and justified controversial actions taken by or on behalf of their bosses under all circumstances. ये खतरनाक मतलब कितना बर्ताव है, जो भी मतलब कहिए इसको. The second category rendered appropriate advice on all occasions based on the experience, expertise, and knowledge without expecting in return. They also came up with alternative plans and solutions to problems as and when they thought things were not moving in the right direction. But once a decision was taken by their bosses, they abided by it till the end. To the third category belonged those hard-working and conscientious officers who had no personal axe to grind and carried out the tasks assigned to them in right earnest as part of their normal duties. While performing their duties, they somehow convinced themselves. This is important. While performing their duties, they hypnotized themselves. They somehow convinced themselves about the righteousness of the cause for which their services had been enlisted. They hypnotized themselves without asking any.
सर्विस करने का मतलब ये है अपना तुम कॉन्शियस बेच दो और मतलब
मार
खरीद
दो.
लेते हैं ना वो कि हाँ भाई ठीक है, यू डोंट हैव टू एक्ट एज पर योर विम्स एंड फैंसी. ऊपर वाला जो ऑर्डर देगा उसी तरीके से करो. गलत होगा तो सही, सही होगा तो सही. अगर आप उसको फॉलो नहीं करोगे तो आपके मार देंगे वो.
जी जी. The ambitious P.C. Alexander.
रमन
PC
साहब,
Alexander.
ये बंदा महाराष्ट्र का गवर्नर भी था.
P.C. Alexander belonged to the first category, a highly successful IAS officer of the 1948 batch, Madras first batch of IAS post-independence. He held a number of important posts and assignments during his career. After working in his home cadre and in various ministries at New Delhi, he became Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's principal secretary in May 1981 and continued to serve in that capacity with Rajiv Gandhi till January 1985, when he had to resign after the infamous Kumar Narayan spy scandal, in which his personal secretary and two assistants were involved. They were caught passing on copies of top secret documents received by Alexander.
एक मिनट, किसी दिन इसके बारे में करेंगे. ये भी बहुत भयंकर चीज हुई थी.
खतरनाक चीज है. They were caught passing on copies of top secret documents received by Alexander to the handlers linked to some embassies. यहाँ खुलासा नहीं कर रहा है, पूरा चीज बता नहीं रहा. To the handlers linked to some embassies located in New Delhi. originating from highly sensitive departments such as the RAW, Atomic Energy Commission, and India's Space Agency ISRO. Their safe custody was Alexander's to ensure. In terms of the scandal's impact on the RAW, in addition to the leakage of sensitive information contained in those notes, the names of issuing officers, including my own, their designations and areas of responsibility, were also compromised. Following that, it was decided that the RAW officers authorized to issue such notes would use their designations only and not their names. From that day onwards, the number of officers working in the RAW, a department directly under the charge of the Prime Minister, became truly nameless and faceless entities, even for the Prime Minister's office. It was a serious lapse on Alexander's part. He got away only with his resignation from the post of principal secretary to the PM, with his personal secretary and two assistants
Jail.
going to jail. He was soon rehabilitated and sent to London for 2 years, 1985 to 1987, as India's High Commissioner. On
अब
his
ये
return,
बताइए, ये आदमी स्पाइंग में इन्वॉल्व है और राजीव गांधी
उसको
उसको 85-87 तक गवर्नर वहां का एम्बेसडर बना रहे हैं.
हाई कमिश्नर बना.
सोचो क्या क्या देश में चल रहा था यार.
हाँ, तो जैसा मतलब राजा होगा वैसा ही करेगा ना, वो वैसा आदमी रखेगा बगल में. On his return, he was appointed governor of Tamil Nadu 1988 to 1980 and 1988 to 1990, and then of Maharashtra 1993 to 2002. The NDA, National Democratic Alliance government, led by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, wanted to nominate him to the post of President of India in 2002. आप जो बोलते हैं ना अरे इनके बारे में क्या बोलूं, मैं नाम भी नहीं लेना चाहता हूँ.
चलो चलो आगे चलो.
But the proposal fell through because of lack of support from the Congress. देखो उल्टा काम हो रहा है. Following that, he was made a Rajya Sabha member 2002 to 2008 by the NDA government.
नहीं वो that was good luck for APJ अब्दुल कलाम. अच्छा हुआ इसको नहीं नॉमिनेट किया, तो उस चक्कर में हमारे को अच्छा प्रेसिडेंट मिल गया, है ना. ये था.
हाँ जी, ना मैं मानता हूँ, लेकिन इनका मतलब कोई क्रेडेंशियल्स चेक नहीं करता है, और वाजपेयी जी मतलब कुछ नहीं जानते थे.
मैं मानता ही नहीं. वाजपेयी was totally under influence of Brijesh Misra, who was another spy, like PCA Alexander. ये बोल.
जी. जी. Following that, he was made a Rajya Sabha member 2002 to 2008 by the NDA government. Not only had
जिंदगी भर इंदिरा गांधी की राजीव गांधी की चमचागिरी करी और एनडीए जो है उसको राज्यसभा का मेंबर बना रहा है अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी. कटसी ब्रिजेश मिश्रा बता दूं मैं आपको.
जी. Not only had he managed to get out of a sticky situation unscathed, थोड़ा आज भी नहीं आने दिया उसको. He had also endeared himself to two prime ministers from two opposing parties, Indira Gandhi and later Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I have no direct access to or interaction with Alexander. Therefore, my assessment of his role in Punjab affairs is essentially based on the contents of his book and references to his role by other authors. In his memoirs, Through the Corridors of Power, an inside story, Alexander devoted one full chapter of 92 pages to the Akali agitation. In it, he mentioned that there were 26 rounds of talks between the Akalis.
Alexander, वो खालिस्तानी मूवमेंट लिख रहा है,
अकाली एजिटेशन लिख रहा है, उल्टा लिख रहा है ना. वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ. मैं कितना मतलब हरामी आदमी है. In it, he mentioned that there were 26 rounds of talks with the Akalis. देखिए किस पे blame डाल रहा है. Between October 1981 and May 1984 to seek a solution through peaceful negotiations. Surprisingly, he has not mentioned a single word about the most important round of these negotiations, the one mediated by Swaran Singh, which Alexander attended. On the other hand, Alexander gives very minute details in his book of the Rajiv Gandhi-led talks, which followed within a fortnight of the sabotage of the Swaran Singh-led talks on the night of 3rd to 4th of November 1982. In that context, the following paragraph from Alexander's book is rather interesting. As one who
पढ़ोगे
knew Indira
इसको
Gandhi,
देते हैं, इसको मत पढ़ो, इसका
वो
कंक्लूजन
तो
पढ़ते हैं आगे।
वो तो
हाँ?
हाँ, तो फालतू बात ही करेगा ना, घुमा देगा फिर।
यहाँ पढ़ो, ये क्या बोल रहा है।
Alexander says Indira Gandhi sincerely believed till the last moment that a solution could be found through talks. My foot, bole sar, my foot. In fact, there was no need to stretch the negotiations till the last moment. In the first place, as she could have settled the matter back in 1982 by sticking her with the initial acceptance of the Swaran Singh formula. How credible can one consider Alexander's terming? देखिए, how credible can one consider Alexander's terming of these reports as mischievous when he was himself completely omitted, when he has himself completely omitted the most crucial round of mediated talks from his book. In fact, the deliberate omission of reference to the Swaran Singh mediated solution is not just limited to Alexander's book. A cover up to remove its traces began as early as July 1984 with the central government's white paper on Punjab, which was tabled in Parliament within 1 month of Operation Blue Star. Noting the total absence of reference to the Swaran Singh mediated talks in the paper, senior BJP leader and later Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee stated in Parliament on 25th of July 1984. There is no reference in the white paper to the efforts made by Sardar Swaran Singh. Has the Congress disowned even Sardar Swaran Singh? Did he make any efforts or did he not? Alexander was one of the members of the three-man think tank and in his capacity as principal secretary to the Prime Minister was in a position to influence the views of the other two by dropping subtle hints as to what his boss would appreciate. Also, all three members of the think tank, Alexander, Cabinet Secretary C.R. Krishnaswamy Rao Sahib and Home Secretary Chaturvedi, were highly experienced officers who, as the saying goes in Urdu, couldn't count the feathers of a flying sparrow. They knew very well the Indian bureaucratic ways of holding and prolonging fruitless discussions, best described by the dictum Naksha, meeting or salam, which means prepare maps or collect a lot of relevant data, hold protracted discussions without conceding anything substantial, while keeping the hope of another session alive. खींचते रहो, keep the pot boiling.
आज मीटिंग बुलाई है, चाय बिस्किट खिला दो, ठीक है, 15 दिन के
कल
बाद फिर
रखते हैं।
देखेंगे, 15 दिन के बाद फिर देखेंगे।
Unfamiliar as the think tank was with
गंजे को बाल नहीं देता है आदमी, अच्छा क्या होता है वो, गंजे को बाल नहीं होता ना, क्या होता है वो,
कंगी नहीं,
हाँ
कंगी बेचता गंजे को।
तो यही है ना कि अच्छा हुआ कम का अपना साला सिविल सर्विसेज में सिलेक्शन नहीं हुआ, नहीं तो हमारे को तो
नहीं अच्छा हुआ सर, हम लोग काम कर नहीं पाते, हम लोग काम कर नहीं पाते, या तो हम रहते नहीं तो उन लोग रहते।
ट्रेनिंग के बाद ही किया, तो हमारे को कोई
मारते लात वहीं एकदम,
ये मार देते साले। Unfamiliar as the think tank was with
Punjab affairs to begin with, it would not have been difficult for them to work out an amicable solution to the Punjab imbroglio, provided only there was a suitable signal from the top.
मैडम ने बोल के रखा होगा इसको 85 तक चलने दो, आप बैठे रहो यहाँ पर हमारे प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी बने हुए, क्या फर्क पड़ता है हमारा बच्चा।
सर इसको बोलते हैं government service in the highest echelons of power in the hierarchy, in the top rung of the ladder. ये यदि ऐसा चलता है तो ऐसा नौकरी नहीं चाहिए हमें सर।
ये पढ़ो
जी स्पाई मास्टर आरन काव, रामेश्वर नाथ काव, IP 1940 United Provinces, a role model for the second category of bureaucrat, was recalled by Indira Gandhi from his retirement and appointed senior advisor in the cabinet secretariat in August 1981. Soon after his appointment, he established a three-man policy and research group comprising Ambassador A.K. Damodaran, IFS retired, and two former raw officers, G.S. Mishra and S.K. Chaturvedi, mainly to help him in foreign policy-related matters, especially for China. Before his retirement, Mishra was one of the department's leading experts on China and had served in Beijing, while Chaturvedi had been the head of the RAW's economic division. while Kao and his personal staff functioned from both the ground floor of the Cabinet Secretary's office block in Rashtrapati Bhavan and from Bikaner House Annex. The activities of the Policy and Research Group were confined to Bikaner House Annex alone. Kao used the Rashtrapati Bhavan office for official meetings, but operational work and related meetings were conducted from Bikaner House Annex. In Alexander's words, Kao was a member of a three-man core group dealing with national security matters. The other two members were Alexander himself and Cabinet Secretary C.R. Krishnaswamy Rao Sahib. In addition, Kao was also involved in carrying out special operations directly assigned by Indira Gandhi. One such instance was his visit to Washington, D.C. to remove the Reagan administration's misunderstanding about a policy on Afghanistan. This visit took place sometime before the PM's state visit to the US in July 1982, and for that purpose, Kao had used the good offices of his old friend George H.W. Bush, Director CIA, 1976 to 77, Vice President of the US in 1980 to 84, and later the 41st US President from January 89 to January 1993. अच्छा अंदर अंदर देखिए
जॉर्ज बुश का बाप था बड़ा वाला, जब वो इराक का जब हुआ था वो वाला।
तो इसीलिए तो सर मैं बोल रहा हूँ, देखिए क्या है।
He was CIA director and this person was R&W का डायरेक्टर था, इसके लिए दोनों की दोस्ती थी। अच्छा,
The second assignment related to a visit to Beijing, facilitated by Yugoslav intelligence to test the waters of a possible visit to China by Indira Gandhi, as well as the possibility of establishing a Rao's liaison relationship with the Ministry of State Security, MSS.
चाइना वाले लव करेंगे इनको सालों को, कोई मतलब नहीं, देखना आगे कुछ करो, वैसे ही होगा।
China's intelligence, security and secret police agency responsible for counter-intelligence, foreign intelligence and political security. In fact, Kao was in Beijing on 31st of October 1984 when he came to know of Indira Gandhi's assassination. His hosts provided him with a special aircraft to take him.
मुझे बहुत तकलीफ हो रही है, ये अपने बाप की असली कुतिया थी, ये कुतिया बोल रहा हूँ मैं, बीच चाइना ने हमारे ऊपर अटैक करके
सही कहा था,
लेकिन ये फिर भी वहां पर अपना R&W वालों को भेजना चाह रही थी। वाओ,
मैंने रिचर्ड निक्सन ने सही पकड़ा था ना।
वो तेरी तो बाप रे, क्या यार मल्टी लेयर पर्सनालिटी थी ये। गरीबों को चूतिया बनाती थी, ब्यूरोक्रेट को चूतिया बना रही थी, इंटेलिजेंस वालों को उल्लू बना रही थी, पूरे वर्ल्ड अरेना को उल्लू बना रही थी। मतलब उधर रीगन को पटा रही है, उधर चाइना के साथ
अंदर दोस्ती करना चाह रही है। टेस्टिंग द वाटर्स थ्रू युगोस्लाव इंटेलिजेंस।
यस युगोस्लाव मतलब मार्शल टिटो ना, मार्शल टिटो
मार्शल टिटो पिताजी का दोस्त था ना।
हाँ वही, ये इसका भी इसके साथ में भी था ना वो युगोस्लाविया।
his host, his host
और ये और मार्शल टिटो तीनों के साथ में रहते।
His host provided with him with a special aircraft to take him to Hong Kong so he could catch the Air India flight to New Delhi the same afternoon.
Who provided him? क्या किया है? His host.
Host Beijing जाने के लिए ना, host तो Chinese वाले थे ना। The second assignment related to a visit to Beijing facilitated, वो तो हो गया, Hong Kong, so he could catch the Air India flight to New Delhi the same afternoon. The liaison relationship was established soon thereafter, but the PM's visit had to wait till 1988 when Rajiv Gandhi paid a visit to China. Incidentally, I was at that time Joint Secretary looking after China analysis and was asked to prepare notes in connection with that visit. Kao was also involved in some other foreign policy related visits and a couple of secret operations related to internal matters. Here, however, we need to examine Kao's role in Operation 2 only. B. Raman and two other officers from the RAW accompanied Kao to London and Zurich to meet Khalistani elements and seek their cooperation in getting Bhideranwale and other extremist elements to vacate the Golden Temple complex. अरे कौन करेगा ये सब? Raman's job was to discreetly record their conversations transcribe them and give Cow the transcripts in order to brief Indira Gandhi on her return. It appears the visits took place in January to February 1984, by which Bhideranwale had shifted to the Akal Takht on 15th of December 1983. According to Raman, a Khalistani leader from the US who met Cow at Zurich offered to try to help if he was allowed to go into the Golden Temple and meet Bhideranwale. As a proof of his goodwill, he claimed that the Khalistani elements in the US had planned to kill their officer in Washington, D.C., but he prevented them from doing so. I was told that Indira Gandhi was against.
बोल रहा है अच्छा as proof of his goodwill अच्छा मारने वाले थे मैंने बचा दिया ठीक है
हाँ वो सरदार जी बचा है ना अच्छा I was told that Indira Gandhi was against accepting his proposal to send him inside the temple. She felt that if this person also stayed behind and joined Bhideranwale, it could add to the problem of the government of India. Though Raman has not named him, it is obvious that the Khalistani leader he refers to was the Washington D.C. based Ganga Singh Dhillon, head of the Nankana Sahib Foundation. Dhillon was earlier allowed, if not encouraged, to visit Chandigarh in mid-March 1981 to preside over a Sikh education conference, where he moved a resolution for the creation of Khalistan. His visit suited the Congress party at that time. Now, it did not. The time was not opportune to allow a US national of his background to meet Bhideranwale in the Golden Temple complex. He could have stayed back or been held hostage by Bhideranwale. Also, the presence of a US national in the Akal Takht at the time of Operation Blue Star would have created a number of problems. The US Embassy in India would have taken every possible measure to get him out alive before Blue Star began. But Dhillon, by that time, would have noticed or come to know quite a few things that the Indian government would not have wanted him to know. Also, the chances of Dhillon convincing Bhideranwale to leave the Akal Takht. Were remote. Indira Gandhi possibly did not want to risk Bhideranwale walking out of the temple complex alive. It could not be the final solution to the Punjab problem. Again, spilling the beans. Worried about spilling the beans. Given his charter, Cow could not have returned from London without meeting Jagjit Singh Chauhan, head of the National Council of Khalistan. Besides, Cow must have met a number of prominent Sikh leaders from the UK and other countries. Regarding Cow's meetings with Khalistani elements, I don't think any one of them was in a position to convince Bhideranwale to vacate the Golden Temple complex, to which Cow might have soon realized if he did not know it before he left Delhi. Obviously, those meetings did not produce any results, but Cow's secret and mysterious meetings with them in a quiet place like Zurich or even London might have created an impression on the Sikhs whom he met that the Prime Minister, who had specially sent Cow to talk to them, were actually serious about finding a peaceful solution to the Punjab problem. It was the same impression that the repeated negotiations with Akali leaders were creating in India. On the basis of what has been written earlier in this book, the contents of Raman's and Alexander's books, and my own personal experience of dealing with Cow, the following things emerge about Cow's role during that period. Cow knew about the overall requirements of Operation 2 and did whatever was possible within his means to help it along. Regarding my own very limited role in furthering the cause of Operation 2, I undertook my first visit to
दादा
जी
how
सर
one lady becomes so shrewd यार कितना भयंकर दिमाग चलता था उसका
हाँ तो very good puppeteer, excellent puppeteer also. takes a lot to convince a big group of people.
I undertook my first visit to the US and Canada in
US and
December
Canada in
1981.
December 1981 upon Kao's instructions conveyed through Santuk, and on return reported the outcome of my visit to him. I was again upon his instruction that I met the PIO to the PM, Sharda Prasad, and handed over the note I had prepared for Kao's perusal, which was unfortunately used for doing just the opposite of what I had suggested. My two subsequent visits to the US and Canada in July 1982 and September 1983 were undertaken as per Kao's suggestion to Santuk and then to Gary Saxena. It is, however, not clear when Kao came to know about the real nature of the final solution to the Punjab problem. From some of his actions, it appears that he might have come to know of it within a year or so of his appointment as senior advisor, as he had started exploring softer solutions for the Punjab problem soon thereafter. His efforts to get Gurudwara Chowk Mehta cased by me and the aborted SFF-led Helibon operation are indicative of that. Kao, however, remained involved with the Punjab decision-making process till the very end and participated in the three meetings with General Vaidya on 25th of May, 27th of May, and 29th of May 1984, where the decision to launch Operation Blue Star was taken, which is given in the next chapter. P.C. Alexander has not mentioned anything about cows posing questions about the operation at any of the meetings. However, it is my professional judgment that an experienced person like Cow would not sit quietly during such meetings without asking General Vaidya how General Sundarji's revised plan would help clear a well-fortified Akal Takht without any significant loss of life. Moreover, if the DIG BSF GS Pandar referred to in the next chapter could raise such doubts at the meeting called by Major General Brar on 3rd of June, Kaur was much better equipped to have asked similar questions of General Vaidya. It may be relevant here to compare Kaur's performance in the pre-March 1977 period as Secretary Raw with his post-retirement comeback as senior advisor in August 1981. During his previous tenure, the Raw achieved major successes within a few years of its creation in September 1968. These included two landmark operations, the liberation of Bangladesh and Sikkim's merger with India, which changed the maps of South Asia and India respectively. Those achievements built his reputation in India and abroad. Those achievements built his reputation in India and abroad as a master spy who commanded respect. During that period, he had some good friends in P.N. Haksa, Principal Secretary to the PM, and P.N. Dar, a close advisor to the PM. Before the implementation of the emergency, Indira Gandhi had experienced cabinet colleagues capable of giving her independent advice. In her second tenure, the cabinet comprised only yes men who dared not disagree with her, and this affected her capacity to take well-considered and sound decisions. The pre-emergency period, Sanjay Gandhi's emergence as a new power center did not have any impact on the functioning of the RAW, as he was not interested in its activities. But in the post-emergency period, Indira Gandhi's decision-making, especially when it came to the Punjab situation, was influenced by the One Akbar Road group. In fact, the decision to win the next parliamentary elections due before January 1985 on the Khalistan issue had been taken by Sanjay and his close advisors before Kaur had rejoined work. Sanjay Gandhi was tragically killed in a plane crash on 23rd of June 1980. As senior advisor, Kaur's role was largely shaped by the insecurity of a prime minister lacking the senior advice of a senior cabinet ministers and independent principal secretaries. This led her to depend heavily for advice on Rajiv Gandhi, who had entered politics following Sanjay's death, and his close advisors. Kaur had to function within the parameters defined.
यहाँ पे सिद्धू साहब अपने ससुर के
बचा
बारे
रहे
में
हैं,
बता रहे थे।
थोड़ा बचा भी रहे हैं।
नहीं, अपने ससुर पर वो कर रहे हैं ना, ससुर को बोल रहे हैं कि हाँ, स्वरण सिंह जो थे ना, ये लोग जैसे स्वरण सिंह हो गए, वाईबी चौहान हो गए, ये लोग अच्छी खासी उनको एडवाइस देते थे। इमरजेंसी से पहले जगीमन राम थे, बगुणा थे, ये लोग उनको एडवाइस दिया करते थे। बाद में जब ये 80 को जीतने के बाद आई ना तो सारे निकाल दिया था ना, इनमें कोई था ही नहीं।
हाँ, कोई नहीं था ना, तो राजीव गांधी रह गया ना. So Cow had to function within the parameters defined by the One Akbar Road. Within the changed circumstances, clearly Cow, who had seen better days in his own way, did try his best to change the course of events, especially those related to Punjab, but did not succeed. While he continued to receive unstinted support from the Raw due to his past connection with it and the personal regard that Santu, Gary Saxena, and several of the officers had for him, getting support from the Intelligence Bureau was difficult. In 1968, had walked out of the Intelligence Bureau with some others to create a new department, which some senior officers of the Intelligence Bureau did not like. रॉ तो इसी से बना था ना, निकाल कर लोगों को निकाल कर.
जैसे अर्थ में जब वो टक्कर लगी थी तो मार्च बना था, वैसे ही ये भी है कि जब आईबी में टक्कर लगी थी तो रॉ बना था.
Also, the IB was working directly under the charge of the Home Minister, while Cow was a part of the Cabinet Secretariat. Therefore, all sensitive information was passed on by the IB to the PM, either directly or by its director through the Home Minister, keeping Cow out of the loop. Under the given circumstances, he might have faced coordination problems with the IB. During his earlier tenure, Congress
IB वाले भी बोलते हैं दादा क्यों देने का, प्राइम मिनिस्टर को देना है,
प्राइम मिनिस्टर को दे देंगे, जब देना है पीएम को डायरेक्टली देंगे, इस गधे को क्यों देंगे?
यस,
गधा नहीं, हरामी, मतलब इस हरामी को क्यों देंगे?
यस.
During his earlier tenure, Congress party work and government work, as far as possible, were kept separate. But during Cow's second phase at work, the actual decision-making process on Punjab and Sikh affairs had shifted from the PMO in South Block and the MH in North Block to One Akbar Road. As senior advisor, Cow was also responsible for Indira Gandhi's safety. Cow had set up a coordination committee for security comprising senior representatives of security departments and intelligence agencies. It met daily under his chairmanship and discussed intelligence inputs related to a security and a daily program. Rajiv Gandhi, who did not hold any position in the cabinet, government at the time, took close interest in the actions taken to strengthen the PM's physical security. According to B. Raman, as per the desire, two of his closest incidentally, Rajiv Gandhi and two of his close associates also held a number of meetings with Akali Dal leaders in the New Delhi guest house of the Raw. तब उसके बाद भी ये लोग गधा बना रहा है. Raman was given the task of making arrangements for these meetings, recording the discussions, transcribing them, and putting the transcripts to Cow for briefing Indira Gandhi. Regarding the removal or redeployment of Sikh security staff at Indira Gandhi's residence, B. Raman writes, the withdrawal of the Sikh officers from close proximity duties came to the notice of Indira Gandhi. Some say she noticed it herself. Others say one of her close associates noticed it, ascertained from the Delhi police that this was done on the orders of Cow, and brought this to her attention. She expressed her misgivings over the wisdom of the decision. Following this, the withdrawn Sikh police officers were posted back to her residence. However, Cow instructed that no Sikh police officer should normally be posted alone in a close proximity, and that whenever a Sikh police officer was posted in a close proximity, he should be accompanied by a non-Sikh officer. It was the violation of these instructions of Cow's that created the conditions for her assassination. It took Sweden 34 years, 10,000 interviews, and 134 confessions to bring a closure to the case of the murder of their popular Prime Minister Olof Palme in February 1989. On 10th of June 2020, it was finally determined that the real killer was the self-professed eyewitness Stig Engström. अच्छा, ये eyewitness भी था, बोल रहा था self-professed.
वही eyewitness बना हुआ था जो killer था.
बोल रहा है self-professed, यही killer था. Though the killer could not be punished for his crime, as he died in 2000, the closure was needed to start the healing process of a nation troubled by its inability to find and punish the real culprit. In that context, though the real killers of Indira Gandhi got the punishment they deserved, it is still not known as to who advised Indira Gandhi on the most crucial issue of recalling those armed Sikh guards who were removed from duty at PM's residence after Operation Blue Star on Kaur's advice. Also, why was Satwant Singh allowed to join Beyond Singh against Kaur's specific instructions of not letting the two armed Sikh guards come together, and that too within the inner circle? One of the three notes written by Kaur, which is at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, NML in New Delhi, and is closed for public view till 2027 after his death, is on the assassination of Indira Gandhi. It would be interesting to see whether this note contains only details of what he did to protect her life or whether it had some other information too. To bring a closure to the whole issue and in the national interest, it would be advisable to open Kaur's note. In view of all these developments, I do wish that Kaur had not come out of his retirement. In that context, I agree with B. Raman, who says the almost 3-year, 1981 to 1984, post-retirement tenure of Kaur as the senior advisor to Indira Gandhi in the cabinet secretariat did not have the brilliant dazzle of his tenure as the founder and head of the RAW between 1968 and 1977. The hard-working B. Raman. B. Bahu Kutumbi Raman, IPS 1961 MP cadre, represented the third category of officers mentioned at the beginning of this chapter. Raman was one of the most hard-working officers to have been employed at the RAW. A bachelor, he was married to his work and had no other hobby. For him, his home was an extension of his office. He could rattle off facts and figures on the subjects he dealt with at will. He had all the qualities that the RAW chief needed in his staff officer, and this endeared him to Kaur also. But his handling of Sikh affairs up to the period ending November 1984 and thereafter, he suffered the following handicaps. First, as Sikh extremism was totally a new development for the RAW, till the end of 1980, there were no past records of such activities in the department to consult or refer to. Some files on the activities from within Pakistan and the UK and US of the Pakistan organized sponsored Jagjit Singh Chauhan's organization and the related activities of people like Ganga Singh Dhillon of Nankana Sahib Foundation in Washington, D.C. might have been transferred from the RAW's Pakistan division to the newly created division under Raman. It was natural that RAW officers already posted in these areas before the 7 new stations started functioning one by one by early 1982, where there were a comparatively large presence of Sikhs after being asked to watch out for pro-Khalistan or Sikh extremist activities, might have started sending their reports on the subject, but those would have been sketchy to begin with. So Raman's information bank was initially mainly based on published information and the sketchy reports from existing stations based on the new charter of requirements. Second, Raman did not go deep into the recent or early history of the Sikhs to really appreciate why the concept of Khalistan started attracting attention of some only after the Congress returned to power in January 1980. This lack of proper understanding of the subject soon started reflecting in the notes he produced on the basis of open information and inputs from the RAW stations abroad, some of which might have actually resulted from one Akbar group inspired moves. However, those reports were appreciated even at the foreign minister's level, though none of the senior level consumers of the reports, including cabinet ministers, had any power to change the course of events predetermined by the one Akbar or group. Raman's reports might have led them to think that even events in Punjab required the strongest possible action to save India's unity, thereby providing some justification in their minds about the severity of action taken through Operation Blue Star. Third, the principal information officer to the Prime Minister is usually not a recipient of the RAW reports for obvious reasons, but from the way Kaur sent me to hand over my report to the PIO to the PM, H.Y. Sharda Prasad in January 1982, it appeared that Kao and Sharda Prasad were working in tandem. It is also obvious that Sharda Prasad used my report as a barometer to measure the impact of his media management on furthering the cause of Operation 2. अच्छा, एक दूसरे का मतलब दूसरे को चेक भी करते थे इस तरह कि कहाँ तक आगे बढ़ा है, क्या है, नहीं है, कोलीग को भी चेक करता था. The report might also have been used to assess what more needed to be done. It created a vicious circle, with Raman feeding information to Sharda Prasad feeding that information to his high-level contacts in the Indian press, which information in turn appeared in some leading newspapers in the form of beefed-up lead articles on editorial pages written by influential journalists. And finally, that information in the form of press clippings landing on Raman's table to confirm what he originally thought to be reliable. बाप रे, देखिए प्लान कैसे सर्कल लेकर के घूम रहा है. मेरा ही बनाया हुआ चीज बाहर जा रहा है, वही छप रहा है, वापस आ रहा है, मुझे लग रहा है सही सोच रहा हूँ. And worth sharing with the consumers of information. इसलिए consumers of information बोल रहा है. For while transcribing secretly recorded conversations of meetings with Akali leaders with senior Congress leaders and of the Khalistani elements and influential Sikhs with Kao in London, Zurich, and elsewhere, Raman was influenced by the views of Rajiv Gandhi and his friends in the first instance, and by Kao's later, for reasons explained earlier. It is extremely difficult for most civil servants not to be influenced by the views of important people around them. Besides, ये सच बोला है. Besides, in such an environment, there is little scope for civil servants to hold or express independent views of their own. This is also true. This usually become part of the system. Last but not the least, perhaps the most significant shortcoming of Raman's reports and notes on Khalistan Sikh extremist affairs was that he was both the operational and analysis head of the newly created division to cover Sikh extremism or Khalistan-related activities in India and abroad, especially the latter. On the one hand, he was producing and collecting raw matlab kacha and unprocessed intelligence, and on the other, as recipient of the same information, he was analyzing and assessing its value for dissemination to important consumers. कितना बेवकूफ बना ये आदमी, सोचता होगा कि बड़ा स्पाई हूं मैं. हाँ? This is against the very basic tenets. देखिए सर, this is against the very basic tenets of intelligence. An operational officer is highly protective of information or intelligence produced by him or his juniors and views it in a subjective manner. Being so, he or she cannot be absolutely dispassionate and strictly objective in assessing its real worth. Under normal circumstances, the information has to pass the analytical test of accessibility, reliability, and finally, acceptability under the vigilant eyes of an independent, knowledgeable, and experienced analysis desk officer before it is processed and disseminated in a suitable manner to consumers. On instructions from both Santuk and Gary Saxena, whenever Raman was out of station, his assistant director would show me the drafts of reports meant for consumers outside the department. अच्छा हुआ इसको दिखाया. I used to make changes in some of those drafts as they had a perceptible bias and showed a lack of proper understanding of the subject in its historical perspective. This process continued till early 1984, even though I had moved over to an analysis division in November 1983. To be fair to Raman, he was not a careerist and would ingratiate himself with the powers that be by suitably tweaking his reports. In fact, he was just the opposite. As additional secretary, because of his outstanding service record in the proceedings of the Departmental Promotion Committee, he had superseded some officers who were a couple of years senior to him for promotion to the next rank. He should have been promoted to the rank of special secretary, but he preferred not to represent his case and finally retired as additional secretary, as age was not in his favor for his next promotion in the normal course.
बस बंद करते हैं अब इसको, बहुत हो गया, अभी इसको डिस्कस करेंगे।
ये डाइजेस्ट करने में लोगों को मतलब
नहीं,
आसान नहीं होगा, डाइजेस्ट करना आसान नहीं सर।
It's too
बताइए।
heavy है, बहुत बहुत
नहीं,
हैवी है, बहुत
हैवी है। और देखिए कितना मतलब कॉन्स्पिरेसी, मतलब कि कहाँ तक जा सकता है। जो आदमी नौकरी कर रहा है उसको भी बेवकूफ बना रहा है।
जुलाई 2010 में जो ऑफिसर विजिलेंस में बैठा हुआ था, जो मुझे चार्जशीट दे रहा था, उसने एक दिन पहले मुझे फोन किया, बीबी सिंह आ जा, तेरे को चाय पिलाता हूँ। मैंने कहा यार इतने दिन तक तो तू बोलता था भाई मेरे पास में मत बैठा कर, मेरे को डर लगता है कहीं लोग बाग बोल देंगे ऐसा हो जाएगा वैसा हो जाएगा, चाय पीने क्यों बुला रहा है। तो खैर मैं गया वहां पर ऑफिस में, उसने मुझे चार्जशीट पकड़ाई, बोलता है मैं क्या करूं यार, मैंने तो बहुत कन्विंस किया कमिश्नर को कि ये आप गलत चार्जशीट इश्यू कर रहे हो, लेकिन क्या करें, नौकरी करनी पड़ती है। मैं अपने मतलब क्या बोल रहा है कि मैं अपने कॉलीग का ही गला दबा रहा हूँ, लेकिन दबाना पड़ रहा है, मेरे को नौकरी करनी है, बोलता ये हालत।
तो उसको बोलना चाहिए था कि तेरा भी गला एकदम दब जाए।
ऑल दी चार्जेस आर फ्रिवलेस, दिस थिंग एंड दैट थिंग। वो मेरे को बोलता मुझे, मैं क्या करूं, मेरे को बॉस ने बोला है मुझे देनी पड़ेगी चार्जेस। ऐसे ये चूतिया रमन था।
हाँ, यही तो बोल रहा हूँ, यही
जो भी करना है कर दो। और ये लोग हाईली पेड हैं, देवर पेट। ये बोलता ना, एक हमारे यहाँ पे डिपार्टमेंट बोलते थे कि कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं जो टॉमी डॉग की तरीके से बिहेव करते हैं। जैसे बॉस बोलता है टॉमी रन, तो टॉमी रन करेगा, टॉमी स्टॉप, वो वहीं पे स्टॉप कर जाएगा।
सर एक हाई फ्रीक्वेंसी, सर एक हाई फ्रीक्वेंसी विसल आती है, वो आप खरीद लीजिए, थोड़ा एडजस्ट कराइए। आपके पास घर में जो इंसान को सुनाई नहीं देगा, लेकिन उसको सुनाई देगा, एनिमल को सुनाई देगा। मेरे पास जब था, मैं रखता था, तो उससे तो आवाज नहीं निकलता। वैसे ना आप लो करोगे तो कोई आवाज नहीं निकलेगी। हाई फ्रीक्वेंसी विसल एकदम सस्ता चीज है, वो कहीं भी आपको पेट।
कितना हो गया? 11:15 बज गया ना? हाँ 11:15 बज गया लगता है।
सर कल तो छुट्टी है सर, कल तो छुट्टी है।
आप लोग डिस्कस करो, मेरे पास में 2 टॉमी बैठे हुए हैं, इनको थोड़ा घुमाना है, मेरे को बिटिया छोड़ के गई।
ये भी बच्चे हैं सर, इनको भी ऐसा ना बोलें सर, ये भी बच्चे हैं। क्या इनका कोई नहीं है, तो इनका तो कोई है नहीं, तो क्या किया जाए।
ये लोग तो 15 दिन तक मैंने इनको संभाला है। मेरी बिटिया और दामाद लोग कनाडा गए थे, वो लोग परसों वापस आए हैं, तो वो जब ही वापस आए तो उनको छोड़ नहीं रहे ना। वो अब वो छोटा सा
छोड़ेंगे नहीं ना, छोड़ेंगे नहीं।
आपके सामने भौंकता है, उड़ जाता है, उस चक्कर में उसने मेरे पास छोड़ दिया बेसमेंट में इसको।
नहीं जी
ठीक है,
लेकिन कुछ करें,
ज्वाइन करता हूँ 15 मिनट, ठीक है।
नहीं बच्चे के पास अब रख सकते हैं सर। मेरी बेटी जब छोटी थी ना, मैं अल्सेशियन,
ये छोटी वाली है ना, बहुत भौंकती है, वो उठ जाता है वो सोते हुए।
ये कुछ नहीं, ये चाटेगा, फिर सर चाट देगा, हाथ चाट देगा।
बाहर गाड़ियों की आवाज आती है, कहीं पर भी कुछ भी होएगा, अगर यहाँ पर बिजली चमकती है तो भी ये भौंकना शुरू कर देती है।
अच्छा नहीं, बिजली चमकने से तो कुत्ते जो है पलंग के नीचे चले जाते हैं, ये बात तो सही है।
ये इतनी
कैसा कर रहा है, देखिए कैसा कर रहा है, छोटा सा है, कैसा कर रहा है, देखिए ये प्रोटेस्ट कर रही है, सॉरी
नहीं, वो दूसरी वाली नीचे है, उसको बोल रही है कि देख मैं ऊपर आ गई हूँ, तेरे चांस नहीं है।
अच्छा, उसको भड़काने के लिए।
ये भी है ना, ये देखो, ये दूसरी है।
हाँ जी दोनों का कंपटीशन चलता होगा, फिर दोनों का कंपटीशन चलता होगा।
हाँ, आप लोग बात करो, मैं थोड़ा सा।
जी सर बिल्कुल सर। और रामन सर हैं सर, आप प्रदीप जी हैं?
है दादा, रावण दादा का पता नहीं, रावण दादा।
हाँ, कभी कभी रावण दादा पीछे भी हो जाते हैं। और बताइए सर, कोई नया कुछ सुनाइए। नहीं, नया कुछ सुनाइए सर, और कोई खबर हो।
नया दादा क्या सुनाए, अभी पुराने से फुर्सत नहीं मिल रही, इन्होंने पुराने
ये भी बात सही है। नहीं, ये तो बड़ा भयंकर पोर्शन था ये। देखिए अपना आदमी को बेवकूफ बना रहा है, उसी से खबर जनरेट करवा के उसको न्यूज़पेपर तक पहुंचा कर उसी के पास फिर रिपोर्ट वापस भिजवा रहा है कि हाँ तुम जो कर रहे हो सही कर रहे हो, और अंदर और कुछ चल रहा है। वहाँ कोई ब्रिटिश इंटेलिजेंस एजेंट आ रहा है, उसको इन लोग डिनाई कर रहा है, जबकि इंडिया इंडिपेंडेंट है। तो MI6 के पास क्यों जा रहे हो, उसका एजेंट को क्यों बुला रहे हो? इतना मतलब डॉक्टर्ड और प्लान वेल प्लान्ड अरेंजमेंट था कि इसको चलते देना चाहिए। खत्म होने का जैसे ही चांस आ रहा था ना खत्म होने का, फिर से कोई नया मतलब दिमाग से कुछ निकाल कर ये लोग आगे बढ़ा रहे थे चीज को। इतना बड़ा गैंग था देखिए, उसमें वो सारे बैठे हुए हैं पुराने लोग हमारे, जैल सिंह, इंदिरा गांधी, जितना
दादा
ये
ये गैंग तो आज तक खत्म नहीं हुआ, आज भी ये गैंग बैठा ही हुआ
आज
है।
भी यही कर रही है। हाँ जी, हाँ जी, बिल्कुल
गैंग तो
बिल्कुल,
यही बैठा हुआ है।
एकदम सही।
बस ये है
अब
कि
वही
पावर से
पावर
चले
कम,
गए हैं।
हाँ पावर से चले गए हैं, लेकिन देखिए बाहर तो जाकर उल्टा सीधा तो बक रहा है ना ये आदमी। अब
दादा
लड़का तो
अभी
इसको नहीं कहूंगा मैं।
सेंटेंस कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ।
जी
पावर
जी
से
जी,
चले गए हैं फिर भी पावर में है।
पावर में है मतलब वही न्यूसेंस वैल्यू के हिसाब से।
प्रदीप स्ट्रीम
न्यूसेंस,
बंद
नहीं
कर
दादा,
दो।
सिस्टम डोमिनेट दो तरीके के। देखिए दादा, जो दिख रहा विजिबल है, इन पावर बीजेपी है, ठीक है। पहले ये
जी जी
विजुअली भी जो है इन पावर थे। अब क्या है,
जी,
अब ये विजिबली पावर में नहीं है, बट सिस्टम में पावर में अभी भी है ये।
सिस्टम में तो है ही, क्योंकि इनके ऑफिसर्स तो हैं सब। उस समय जो
हाँ,
रिक्रूट किए
ठीक
गए
है कह
थे,
रहा हूँ।
जो जूनियर ऑफिसर आज सीनियर हो गया है, उसके चमचे वगैरह अभी भी हैं। अच्छा वो कोई रिटायर भी कर गया हो तो सम पर्सन हु हैज बेनिफिटेड फ्रॉम दैट पर्सन, वो तो मतलब हाँ में हाँ मिलाएगा ही, उसको फोन पे
तो
बता
यही
देगा
चीज है दादा,
तुमको ऐसा ऐसा करना।
विजिबल
प्रदीप
पावर
स्ट्रीम
जो।
बंद कर दो यार, प्रदीप स्ट्रीम बंद
जी
कर दो।
प्रदीप जी, हाँ ये कर सकते हैं आप।
हाँ, मैं वो लास्ट वो कंप्लीट कर दूं कि जो विजिबल है पावर में,
जी
दैट इज नॉट पावरफुल। जो सिस्टम में है दैट इज पावरफुल।
जी जी जी,
ये है
तो
कहानी। इसीलिए
मैं
पावर
तो
में कोई भी आता है बहुत कुछ कर नहीं पाता वो।
अरे आईएएस ऑफिसर्स बोलते हैं कि कोई आए कोई जाए हमको क्या फर्क पड़ता है, हम तो सिस्टम बना के रखे हैं, हम तो ट्वीक करेंगे, विल ट्वीक द रूल्स तो सब सर्व आवर ओन इंटरेस्ट्स, बोलते हैं ये डायरेक्टली।
रावण
पॉलिटिशियन जो
दादा,
आ रहा।
आज से रिलेटेड कुछ कमेंट, फिर मैं उसके
नहीं
बाद
नहीं
बंद करूंगा ना। कमेंट का चांस नहीं दूंगा तो बेकार रहेगा ना।
नहीं नहीं, बंद कर दे, बंद कर दे।
ठीक है दादा, फिर मैं क्लोजिंग की तरफ बढ़ रहा हूँ।
जी जी जी,
तो हम अपने सभी दर्शकों को धन्यवाद देते हैं जिन्होंने हमें समय दिया। कृपया इस कंटेंट को लाइक करें, शेयर करें, सब्सक्राइब करें, बेल आइकन जरूर प्रेस कर ले ताकि नोटिफिकेशन मिल जाए। कमेंट करें आगे कैसा कंटेंट देखना चाहते हैं, कौन सी ऐसी मिस्ट्रीज है जो आप चाहते हैं कि रिवील हो। प्लीज कमेंट करें सो दैट वी कैन मेक वीडियो ऑन दैट। तो इसके साथ ही हम जो है आज की जो कार्यक्रम है उसकी समाप्ति करते हैं, और इसके साथ ही जय हिंद, वंदे मातरम, भारत माता की जय।